I wanted to do a video on the reading you did about the coin flipping. Heads I win, tails it's chance. And we need to discuss this in terms of the review of literature that is presented at the beginning of the article. Also, the genius of the simplicity of the experiment. And I would also like to discuss the stylized and sort of outdated um, way of presenting the information. So let's go ahead and look at what exactly this article was about. And it's simply the phenomenon, human phenomenon of being able to understand the logical, the logical mechanics of an event or a situation, and yet psychologically or emotionally or somehow also at the same time being able to forget that belief, if you will, and embrace another notion about ability, and especially ability linked with practice. So um, the authors of this essay, which I believe is over 50 years old at this point, um, looks they look at this in general. They look at the phenomenon of attribution, right? In other words, when there is some sort of skill set or uh, you know learned behavior involved, and someone who is good at that, or has had success at this at the past, like shooting baskets, or um, uh, it could be all sorts of things. Driving. Okay, so when when they succeed at what they were expecting to do, they take credit for it. But when they fail at what they're expecting to do, and when I say they're, I'm talking about us too. This is something that if you look in your own life, I'm sure you can find times when you've done this as well. Um, when you fail at it, you might not take the blame. You might say, well, I win a lot at pickup basketball. I don't, but this is what someone might be saying. I win a lot at pickup basketball, but this time I didn't, and it's because of the wind or the sunlight, or in other words, we just kind of find excuses, right? And many times we might, not really own up to the fact that, hey, we were, if chance is involved, for example, the game of poker, which has a lot of skill involved in it as well, but there is eventually this notion that if the cards aren't with you, the cards aren't with you. So we might say to that, well, I was having an off night, right? Or I was tired. If we usually win at poker, but then we go into a game, to a tournament or a game, and we just lose. Um, Now, there has been work on that. And if you go back and you look at the opening paragraphs of this article, you'll see that the authors talk about that. They talk about the research that has been done. And if you just read that carefully, you can see that they're referencing work that has been done on blame and crediting. Like if you succeed, you credit yourself. If you don't succeed, you tend to blame other outside factors, even though those outside factors might be random. Okay. But the thing is that the work that has already existed before these authors wrote their article, that work did not specifically look at activities of pure chance. It might have looked at activities that had some chance involved, but there was also some skill involved. Okay. So these two writers, researchers, professors, whatever, teachers, they thought through that literature, and they realized, hey, we can contribute something here. We can look at something new, if you will, if we do something that this research isn't doing specifically. We're still going to be working in the field of how we blame or credit ourselves on an outcome of something, but let's look at something that's purely chance. Okay, and let's see what happens. How we can tinker with belief in terms of agency. does the person that's involved in that chance event eventually believe that they can somehow influence the purely chance event, like if they practice harder, if they concentrate harder, right? And so they pick flipping a coin. Let's just flip a coin. The coin, everyone that looks at this can say the coin is, in that one individual flip, it's 50-50, right? Now the percentage, the probability gets a little more complicated, and if you're talking about 5 heads in a row, or flipping 2 heads in a row, there's math that shows you that gets slimmer and slimmer. To flip 10 heads in a row is an incredible event. And if you know basic probability and you can do the math, you realize, yeah, that's not going to happen, anytime soon. So, however, taking one coin and flipping it once, right, and guessing on that flip, is it going to be heads or tails? That's 50-50. That's 1 out of 2. We all understand that you have a 50%. If you're just guessing, you have a 50% chance of getting it right as that coin flips and then lands on the table or whatever. Okay, 50-50. So what they decided to set up, I'm going to talk now about their actual the mechanics of the experiment, is they took their classes and they divided them up into groups, different groups, right? And some of those groups were facilitators of the experiment, and they were in the know, if you will. Okay, they were sort of understanding what the experiment was looking for, and they were helping the administrators, right? The directors of the experiment, the 2 writers. And other groups were interacting with the administrators, and they did not know that it was rigged, if you will. Okay, so what you get, right, when you read this article, you see that there was a group of administrators that were going to flip the coin and count how many times the person that was in one of these blind groups, if you will, groups that didn't know what was happening, how many times they could get it right. There was a group of administrators, student administrators, that were given instruction to inflate the correct guesses. So they would flip a coin a number of times. Let's just say it was 10 times. You have to read the article to find out how many. I might ask you how many on a quiz, so I'm not going to come up with the exact number here, but they would flip a coin, and they would flip it up, and then they would let it fall on their hand, and or they would catch it and they would flip it upside down like this, right? And then they would tell the student standing in front of them on the other side of the table or whatever, heads or tails, what do you think? And if the student said heads, then the person flipping the coin would just look inside to see if it was heads. If it was actually heads, if the student actually got it right, then at this point the student would show it, right, and say, yes, you got it, heads. Okay, and then they would mark it down that there was a correct guess, 1 out of 1 or whatever. They were tallying how many times you actually could get it right. Okay, so then they would flip the coin again, and they would let it fall in their hand, flip it over like this, and then ask, is it heads or tails? And the student then responds. Now, here's where the experiment is set up as an experiment. There was one group of these administrators, these coin flippers, that were told to inflate the number of times the students actually get it right, quote unquote. They were told to lie, in other words. So, but they needed to set it up so that the students that was going through that line, right, with those people, would get a sense that they were getting a lot of flips right. Like they were getting like 90% of their guesses right. Okay. Now, in order to do that, because mathematically it's going to be 50-50, right? The longer you go, the more it's going to approach 50-50. 50 right, 50 wrong in terms of just guessing the flip. But in order to inflate the numbers, the people flipping the coins would say that the person picked right, even if the coin was the opposite. So the person might say heads, and if I were flipping the coin in this group, I know that I needed to inflate the times they got it right. I would look under like this. If it were tails, if it were heads, I'd say, hey, you got it right, and I would show them, right? And then I would mark it down. But then I'd flip again, and I'd say, okay, heads or tails. And if they said heads, and I looked, and this time it was tails, then I would I would just say, okay, you got it right, heads, and I wouldn't show it to them. You see what I'm saying? Because I needed to lie for that one, because I needed to inflate the numbers. Now, no one expects it to get 100%, right? So every now and then I would show them, I would flip, and they would say heads and it's actually tails. I would go, no, you got it wrong, it's tails. So that was, a wrong guess, because you don't want that student to get 100%, but you want them to get over 50. You want to get them 7 times out of 10 right, or 80% of their guesses right, maybe 90%. I don't know. To do that, you had to give that false information. And you built credibility in yourself by showing them the coin when their guess matched what was actually the case. And then quickly, just moving on authoritatively, right? When their guess did not match, you could just keep it hidden. Say, oh, yeah, you got it right. Take the coin back, get it out of there, right? Put it in your hand. Write down the tally as correct. It's a lie, but that's what the experiment was doing. And then you do it again. And because you're keeping the pace of the experiment going, because you're acting authoritative, because you're in charge, many times. Now, this is interesting because I don't know if the write-up, the article actually talks about that. Did any student say, hey, wait, I want to see every flip, right? But that's what was happening. Now, if you can imagine just like 3 stations, right? One station was inflating the number of guesses right, so that the people going through this line, if you will, felt like they were just nailing it. They were getting 8 out of 10 guesses or 90% or whatever, right? Now there was another line, another set of administrators, another table, if you will, and students were coming to this one, and this was the control table. So this was actually the honest table. Every guess, everything was according to the truth. So the students got it right if it was right. They got it wrong if it was wrong. Okay. Now I would assume that the whole showing the coin and not showing the coin would try to be the same as the other tables, so that no one would be suspicious. But the point is, this table actually did it honestly. Okay. Now there was a third table. Okay. And the third table deflated the numbers correct. So they wanted to make these students feel like they were awful at guessing. Okay. Awful at guessing. So what they would do is they'd flip the coin. It'd flip. It would land. You'd look at it. And, if they got it wrong, because that's what you were, you would show him. You would show them, hey, I'm sorry, you said tails, but it's heads, And so when it actually was truly an incorrect guess, you would show them the coin so they could build up confidence that they're getting to see some of the results. And you would just mark it incorrect, right? But then you'd flip, and if it were heads, right, and they said heads, you would just keep it hidden and say, no, it's tails, sorry. And then you would mark it tails, and you'd go on, And you would make sure that these people felt like they were failing, like they were getting 3 out of 10 right. 20% correct in their guesses, okay? And now, once they had that information and they had the students identified as to what station they went through, the experimenters interviewed the students, okay? And they talked to the ones that had their correct guesses inflated, and these students were confident that they just had some sort of skill, that they could do this. Their confidence level rose in their guessing ability. Okay, and then the researchers talked to the ones that had their mistakes inflated. All right, and they felt like they were horrible at picking coins, picking the flip. Right, and these students used language like, well, maybe I need to practice more. Maybe if I focused and practiced more, I could guess it. Well, we know that's not the case, because it's always going to be 50-50. So that's the beauty of this experiment. We all know it's going to be 50-50, yet the experiment shows that one group of people feel like they can actually practice and get better, and another group feels like they're skilled at this. There's no way you can have skill at this, okay, unless the coin or the dice is rigged, right? And you know how to do the rigging. Let's not pull hairs here. This is split hairs. This is just straight up chance. And in a math class, these students would see it and agree with it, and they would understand, right? And yet, when it comes to the way they feel about it, somehow they tend to convince themselves that they can actually get better, or that they have some sort of special skill or ability. Okay, when both of those, that's deeply illogical based on what's actually happening. Okay, so the way that these two authors made a contribution was that they decided to work in the field of chance acts, or of acts, human acts. Some of involved skill, some chance, and that research had already been done, and they decided, well, let's turn up the volume, if you will. Let's take it to 11. My tribute to Spinal Tap there. This is Spinal Tap. Let's take it to 11, and let's just look at an event that is pure chance. And if we can make someone feel like they're good at it, will they actually believe? If we can make someone feel like they're bad at this, will they feel like practicing can help? And that's what they found. Okay, now that's what makes this study unique and original, because it is an original study. It managed to do something that the other studies hadn't already done. And it has a certain beauty to it, because once you realize how it's set up, you know how it works. Like, there's no mystery to how this experiment works and to the results, and it's also so extremely low cost. Like, these teachers could have just used their freshman or sophomore classes to do this, and they come up with an original study that gets published and cited and becomes famous. This is a famous little essay. Brilliant, and they didn't even really do the work. They just tallied the numbers and wrote the results up. The students carried out the experiment, and I'm sure not a dollar switched hands anywhere, as far as like funding for the research or anything. So sometimes people try too hard to come up with original assignments or experiments. If they just are a little more creative, they can create experiments right now that really can be low cost, easy to do, and really provide something to the community. For example, how many times, now this is a digression, but how many times have you heard someone say, well, I felt the person's eyes on me. I felt someone looking at me. Okay. Is that possible? Can you actually feel somebody looking at you? I think that's just an experiment waiting to happen. Right? Just set some people up, put a blindfold on them, or have them facing the wall. And of course, you're going to have to soundproof the thing so they can't hear anything. But when do they sense someone in the room behind them? When do they not? It's as simple as that. And, is there review of literature on this? In other words, has someone already done this experiment? Okay. So the Filling Vision. I could see the title of the report, the essay. Feeling Sight, : two-tier titles. Main title, Feeling Sight, : Oh, what could be the next one? Okay, we take placebo. Let's see. Self-deception. I don't know. I don't want to say that. Because I actually don't know the results, right? It would blow me away if people can actually sense this. I'm assuming they can't. But honestly, I don't know the results yet. So the subtitle would point to the results, so I'll leave the subtitle off there. But I think that's an easy enough experiment that one can do. And it would have value. It would have value if no one has already done it. Or if they have done it, but they've done it with a certain demographic, like say they've done it with older people. Okay, then I might come and do it with children, because there's enough of a switch, right? So that there's enough of a gap. These are different. They're both human, but they're so separated by age that the results that I would get from children are not necessarily going to be the same results that I would get from older people. They might be the same, but they might not. It's worth trying. You see what I'm saying? So that would be coming up with an original piece of work to do that's based on the data approach. The data approach is just trying to get data. I'll tell you something that I used to do with my students, and I don't think anybody's written this up, but I'm past my publishing years. I've done that. I moved on to just other stuff. But anyway, the thing is, I would do this. I think this would work as a publishable thing. for about a year, I asked all my classes to imagine something. Okay, now this was around 2010, 2012. So it's the data's maybe 2015. The data's at least 10 years old. Okay, but I would ask them, imagine yourself sitting on a bench in the hallway, like on a chair in the hallway, or on a bench out on a busy sidewalk on campus. And when classes changed, when the period ended and students would leave to go to another class, and you could watch them pass. If you were just to guess right now, because they're sitting in class, right, and they have their piece of paper with golf pencils and all that stuff, so that I couldn't tell what they were writing. But the point is, I would say, how many out of 100 students, how many do you think would walk by you that would have some sort of, over the head headphones, over the ear, over the head, no, over the ear or on the ear or in the ear, some sort of audio device, headphones, headsets, earbuds in their ears, plugged in, connected to a phone, connected to their device, and not just hanging on the neck, but like on the ears. I asked them, how many people do you think would have this? Now, you know what? Let me just say quickly, we might have also allowed for on the neck. I don't know, but the point was audio equipment. And so I just asked them to guess, and right away, they would write down the guess. I'd pick it up and I'd average it out. The average was about like 75 out of 100. I got some people going 90, 80. Every now and again, I get a 40, a 30 out of 100, but the average was around 70. Let's go 70 to be conservative, because again, it's been about 10 years since I've looked at the data. I think I still have it downstairs somewhere, but the point is, then I would actually pair them up, because the methodology was important. They had to do it in partners. They had to observe each other doing it and all this stuff. But I would send them out to actually do this. They would count. Do you know how many people actually would do this, wear the headphones or the headsets or the earbuds? Out of 100, 17. 17 was the number. 17 was the number. So I don't know how many you guessed, right? But 17 was the number. So what I realized is that the paper I would write about this is not the actual people wearing the headsets, but our perception of how connected people actually are. Now, if you think about that, you might heard a lot of talk about kids always looking at their phones, students always, people on their phones, people always, guys are always playing video games. Well, wait. I don't know that. Let's go see the numbers, right? So I feel like somehow we are getting an impression that people are more committed to their phones and more connected than they actually are. Because in our imagination, we're like, 70%, 70 out of 100 are going to be like covered up with some audio equipment or earbuds or whatever. It was 17, right? So out of 100 that was actually doing that. So something is causing us to have this mismatch, right, of reality and expectation. I don't know if it's commercials. I don't know what it is, but I feel like I got something there, because that data was a surprise. But it's not a surprise in terms of, well, I guess it is about people actually wearing stuff. It's a surprise about what happened in the classroom and the number of people actually wearing stuff. It was such a mismatch that I think now the paper needs to be about our imaginations and technology. You see what I'm saying? Okay, so I just wanted you to see the review of LIT. I mean, why did I bring this in here? I brought this in here because I wanted you to see someone working data. You don't have to do a data paper, but it's really not that hard. And I wanted you to see the review of literature and how they try to situate their work in that. It's all right there in the first column. You have to read it carefully, though. And the other reason I brought this in as a piece for you to read is that you need to see the style. The two-tier title is great. I love that. You got the main title, you got a colon, you got the subtitle, or sometimes it could be an exclamation mark or a question mark or a dash, never a period, never a comma, never a semicolon, separating the main title from the subtitle. Pay attention to the title, because when you write, eventually I'm going to ask you to use two-tier titles, okay? But the point is, this is a style that is very outdated. Notice that they never use the first person pronoun. I don't know why we shouldn't. So you see these books behind me? Well, let's go this way. So many of those books, you see the books on the shelves up there? So many of those books use first person pronoun. Yes, they do. The I, the me, use it. Feel free to use it. Now, you're going to have to see what your teacher wants, but that's a fake rule. And I don't think that's just my opinion. I think that's just a rule that was stuck in grammar, logic grammar, way back when. It was also some failed attempt somewhere down the line from some teacher trying to keep you from analyzing something in a personal, subjective way based on your tastes. I don't even know if there's any way to explain this craziness. But yeah, bring the first person pronoun, the I, the me. Bring it back. It's too good of a word to not use. Can you imagine going through your day without using I, me, mine? Then someone's going to say, well, that's not academic writing. And I would say, well, that's why most academic writing is so boring. One is the style is so bad. Now, if you read this essay, you can see that the style is stilted. It's too much passive voice. If you don't know what passive voice is, just look it up online. But it's hiding the agent. When I say I built this table, which I did. You can't see it now, but that's very active. The subject actually did the verb. But what if we were to say the table was built by Horn? Well, the table is the subject of the sentence now, and the subject did not do the verb. The table was built. The table didn't do the building. So all of a sudden the action disappears. And because of that, the agent of the verb can disappear. Because, if I were to say an active voice, I would say, I built the table. Right? But if I were to say it passive voice, I could just say the table was built. Boom. I could stop it there and destroy the agent. Right? And so it has its uses. But a long time ago, this was how you wrote. Okay, you didn't use the I, the me, the mine. You used a lot of big words. I'm all for big words. I think I have a very large vocabulary. Okay, I'm learning new words every day. I can't believe I'm going to do this because it's going to mess up with the focus of the camera. But I mean, I really do. Look at the words on that blackboard over there, on the side there. And if you can see the lintel, the cover up on the top there, I've got more words. Because I love words. I like vocabulary, but I don't use big words just to use big words, And you read this essay, and this essay is brilliant. The actual essence of the experiment is brilliant. And then you read the words, and it's like, oh, I can't do it. After the first page, I'm like, I got to go step in the sunshine to kind of stop being depressed or something because the wording is so bad. It's so poor. And yet, a lot of times in colleges, in universities, there's this momentum of how it was done in the past, and thus it needs to keep on going. And it's very hard to be truly innovative in a kind of a crystallized place like higher ed. And now that has changed. The style now is different, but sometimes you still get professors that want you to write like that, and it's like, oh man, no, so. I guess I'm different that way, but more and more people are relaxing a little bit. I can't. Okay, I'm digressing. I know this video is going a little bit longer, but there was a point 5-10 years ago. It was a big thing to make sure that your pronoun antecedent numbers were matched. So you would go everybody, which if you think about it is actually singular because it's everybody, B-O-D-Y, not bodies, body. That's singular. So thus it needs a singular pronoun. Going back to it, everybody needs to do his or her homework. Remember that? And then it was even more pronounced when it was like somebody, right? Somebody left his or her watch here on the table. And the awkwardness of the his or her thing. I hated it. And finally, because of the political pressures on our speech in terms of gender selection and do we really know it's a him or a her, or maybe they prefer to be called their, finally the gender gets knocked out of this thing, and I'm like, Woo, let's just do this. Let's just accept it. Everybody needs to do their homework. Somebody left their watch. That's how we speak on the street. Everyone understands it. Our formal language is full of these sorts of weirdnesses. When's the last time you looked at someone and said, hey, you is ready to go? Well, you should have, especially if that person was only one, right? You as a singular means a singular verb. You is ready to go is actually the right way to do it. You, when you look at one other person in front of you and you say, you are my friend, you're using a plural verb to refer to a singular person. That's a mismatch of number. You see what I'm saying? But we've accepted that. We've accepted that for years, for, I don't know, a century, 2 centuries, more, 3 centuries. So, let's just get over this stuff and, just get your spelling right, get your punctuation right. Use good words in right places. Above all things, be clear. And don't think that sounding smart actually means that the thing is smart. Sometimes it is. Sometimes there is that matchup. But many times a verbose writing style can get in the way of the idea. And I'm a firm believer that most of the major philosophical ideas can be explained to let's go, a 9th grader. Okay. A 15-year-old can understand them because the really core issues can be expressed in simple terms, So, okay, that was quite a digression, but this is your English class. You're not writing a whole lot for me. Maybe the punishment here is just to listen to this fellow ramble. Okay, listen. Thank you for watching. I hope that you learned something from that essay.